Welcome to the 8-Minute TrumpCare update at the University of St. Thomas. My name is Kate Deanna, Senior Director of Graduate Programs at the University of St. Thomas, over the Healthcare MBA, Executive MBA, and Masters in Healthcare Communications. In this update, we are looking at a variety of stakeholder perspectives from across the healthcare community about the opportunities and challenges facing the transition from Obamacare to TrumpCare. With us today is Mel Sullivan, New Partner Development at Constellation Mutual, and Dan McLaughlin, who is a faculty member in the Healthcare and the Executive MBA programs at the University of St. Thomas. The first question I'd like to ask is, from everything that's being discussed this week, Mel, what gives you hope?
Well, a recent article that came out said that there has been a job creation from the ACA of 18,000 new people being able to join the healthcare industry. And from a long-term perspective of being in the industry for the last 25 years, I find that very hopeful, that there'll be a new generation of people willing to provide care to many of us that are going to be needed in the upcoming years. And the fact that there's still job generation, despite some of the controversies and the dismay related to some of the changes that are happening globally and locally as well.
Great. And Dan?
I'm really pleased that President Trump has decided that it's going to take a little longer than a few months to revise the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
And he even talked about moving it to 2018. And I think those of us that are close to health policy recognize it's a very complicated thing to change. So let's take our time and do it right.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So on the flip side, what are the concerns that you have after what you've learned this week?
Well, as it relates to locally, I think that one of the concerns is pertains to what we're going to do with our exchange and how individuals are going to be able to acquire health insurance in the state of Minnesota. That's being debated right now with our senators and trying to figure out how that's going to work. I think that's a concern, is what's going to be the ultimate outcome. Is it going to be high-risk pools? And what was interesting is, as you think about what we had maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, now they're thinking of recreating that very same thing, which I'm sure both of you are familiar with, and making those high-risk pools available again. So that is a concern related to how people are going to get health care when they need it.
Great. Dan?
Well, I'm still kind of concerned about the money parts of the Affordable Care Act. There have begun some congressional hearings, and people have not yet really addressed the big problem, which is there's a certain amount of revenue that comes in through taxes, but also on deferred payments to hospitals and to health plans. And all that money funds the subsidies and the exchanges, the Medicaid expansion, and other parts of the Affordable Care Act. And so if you say we're going to reduce all these tax and revenue things, you're going to have to reduce all the benefits until people have really addressed, are you going to not have the Medicaid expansion? Are you not going to give people subsidies for insurance? We really want to have a plan. And so I think it's about time that the people who are making the policies kind of address this. Either we're going to have less benefits and less taxes, or we're going to have the same benefits and the same taxes.
Have you also been aware or have been seeing that it's going to cost us more potentially to unfold the ACA than what it is to actually have it implemented?
Yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of administrative costs, and
Yes.
I think one of the things from the hospital perspective has been that the hospitals gave up a lot of increases in their Medicare revenue into the future with the idea they'd have less uncompensated care. And if in fact a lot of people have less insurance, then they're going to have more uncompensated cares. So there are going to be some big shuffles of some big dollars in the system if they unfold this incorrectly.
So Dan, how do you think the independent physicians are going to set within the whole changes that are happening?
Well, I think independent physicians have got the new reimbursement rules from Medicare, the macro rules, which are going to be the biggest challenge for them. But they have the same issue, is that if there's less people insured, then they're going to have more uncompensated care.
And again, the same issue with how do they collect from those patients, either with higher deductibles or unable to pay at all.
Right, and I think one of the issues that on the policy side from the Republicans in Congress has been their interest in having more high deductible policies with health savings accounts. So from a physician practice perspective, that might be more of a challenge to collect those dollars.
Yes, agreed.
Okay. So looking forward into the upcoming weeks, is there anything that is not being discussed that you think deserves some time and some effort sooner than later? Dan?
Well, I'll let you start.
Okay. There's two things that kind of popped up in my mind recently that are not really being talked about. One is The Affordable Care Act dealt with the Medicare drug benefit, a thing called the donut hole, which is that patients before the Affordable Care Act had coverage up to about $5,000. I'm not sure you get these numbers right. Then there was no coverage until they hit about $9,000. That was
Yeah.
the donut hole. The Affordable Care Act has made that smaller and smaller, and so I would hate to see a change in the Affordable Care Act and go back to where it was. So that was a problem for seniors. The other thing that is part of the Affordable Care Act is essential health benefits, which says all health plans have to have a wide range of benefits. And one of the key ones in my mind is chemical dependency treatment. And right now, the country has an opioid epidemic. And if we back out of that particular thing, which is one of the things that used to be not covered in a lot of health insurance plans, then we're not going to get treatment for those poor, unfortunate individuals that have this addiction. So I'm very concerned that we not back off on the essential health benefits.
Okay. Mel?
One thing I think that's getting lost in a lot of the conversations is what is the patient's responsibility for their own care? And how is it that we can move forward with helping patients understand the complexities of the healthcare system as a whole and being able to navigate it? I think it is so overwhelming in many instances that patients aren't even aware as consumers what their options are and how much it's going to cost, and how do they maybe look for alternative treatment sources or different types of treatment in order to make healthcare accessible and be accountable for their own health. And that is definitely something that's being missed in the whole dialogue. And while policies, procedures, and processes are important, it's also making it understandable and accessible for all the people that are going to need it, whether it's for mental health, which is a really big issue that's being underserved, or many of the other things, including the LGBTQ society and that whole population. And you could go on through a whole litany of lists of things, but in particular, I think that that issue is really not being addressed in any of these conversations.
Thank you. In closing, what are the big ideas that you have?
Well, my big idea kind of comes from the current couple of weeks where we've seen town hall meetings going on around the country, usually run by Republicans, and getting a lot of pushback. And I think that that is kind of interesting theater right now, but you could take that and turn that into a much more productive dialogue. When I first started here at St. Thomas, I worked with Senator Dave Durenberger at the National Institute of Health Policy, and we had a lot of great community events where we got people together and said, what do you want out of your healthcare system? Some of the stuff Mel was just talking about. And then help them kind of rethink about what a future system could look like. If the Republican and Democratic members of Congress would say, okay, we're going to take our time on this, we're going to take a little more time to do this right, let's go out to our communities, let's talk to all our citizens, say, what do you want out of the healthcare system? Then maybe we can come off with a much better, actually, an improvement over the Affordable Care Act that we can all get behind.
Okay. And Mel?
Well, I don't even know if I want to follow you. That's a really good idea. Just sparking.
You can just say agree.
I do agree. Sparking conversation, Dan, was a brilliant idea, and I think that in and by itself, when people get more informed, it changes their opinions about things. And I really have nothing more to add to that. I think that's brilliant. Can we do that? Let's do that here in St. Thomas. Yeah, let's go.
Great. Well, thank you, Mel. Thank you, Dan. This has been great. We continue to look week to week at what's happening with the updates, and we look forward to updating our healthcare and executive community with more about what's happening with the ACA going forward. Thank you very much.